Today I want to dive into a topic that resonates with everyone, I believe, regardless of our spiritual or religious beliefs. The topic is death. Now, recently, Al Pacino opened up about what he calls a near-death experience that occurred about 4 years ago when he contacted COVID-19. According to Al Pacino, while at his home during the illness, he lost consciousness and had no pulse for a period of time, which required medical intervention to revive him. Now, Pacino made some fascinating remarks about this experience, not just what he encountered while he was unconscious, but also how it affected him moving forward. And I think this story is worth reflecting on, especially as it touches on a question we all grapple with. What happens at death and what happens after death? So let's start with something that we all share. The experience of death. No matter who you are, where you come from, or what you believe, you know that death is inevitable. Now, within the Judeo-Christian framework and tradition, death is seen as an enemy of the human family, something that came into the world because of disobedience. But even in other traditions or belief systems, death remains one of the greatest unknowns. In the Christian worldview, death is not just an ending. It is something that will one day be defeated. God's promise to overcome death is central to the hope of resurrection. And it's important to note right here that the idea of resurrection is not unique to Christianity. Many Jews in the time of Jesus believed in a future resurrection of the dead at the end of days. What did surprise many of them was the resurrection of the Messiah before that final resurrection, an event that shaped the Christian understanding of life after death. But regardless of your religious belief today, death and what happens at, around, and after death should be of interest to anyone, whether you're religious, agnostic, or atheist, because it is a mystery we all face. None of us has complete knowledge of what happens at and after we die. Now, Al Pacino's most striking comment about his near-death experience is this. He said, "There's nothing there." He claims that during his time without a pulse, he didn't encounter anything. No white light, no spiritual experience, nothing. Now, let's break that down for a moment. First, can we really take a near-death experience as a glimpse of what happens after death? A near-death experience is, by definition, not actual death. Al Pacino, although he lost his pulse, was revived and is still very much alive today, as I'm recording this segment. He didn't go through what the Bible describes with someone like Lazarus, let's say, who was 4 days dead and already stinking in the tomb. That's a full death experience. Something no one comes back from except by some type of divine intervention. So when Al Pacino says there's nothing there, we have to recognize that he didn't fully die. If anything, a near-death experience might offer us a partial or incomplete understanding of what death is, but it is not definitive. The line between life and death is murky. And sometimes even medical professionals declare someone dead only for that person to be revived. So we shouldn't make bold conclusions about the afterlife and what happens at death based solely on a near-death experience. But this brings us to an important question. What exactly is a near-death experience? Now, according to medical definitions, a near-death experience occurs when someone is on the brink of death. Perhaps their heart stops or they lose brain activity, but they are ultimately resuscitated. Often, people report unusual experiences during these moments, such as seeing a bright light or feeling some sense of peace. But here's where it gets tricky. There's no guarantee that everyone's near-death experience will be the same. You see, Al Pacino mentions he didn't see a white light, but that doesn't mean that no one does. Different people report different things. So it's a mistake to assume that what one person experiences or doesn't experience represents universal truth. What Al Pacino experienced was undoubtedly significant, but to say there's nothing there might be oversimplifying a much more complex question, which leads us to a bigger question. Is there actually something after death? Al Pacino's experience of nothing during his near-death experience brings us back to one fundamental question. Do you believe in a higher power? Do you believe in a deity? If we believe that life is accidental, that 13 billion years ago the universe came into being by random chance with no divine intervention, then we might also believe there's nothing after death. But if we believe in a God or in some form of intelligent design or divinity, then that does open up the possibility of life beyond the physical and material world. Ultimately, the question of the afterlife isn't about what Al Pacino or anyone else has experienced near death. It's about what you believe concerning the existence of a God and the human soul. If you believe in a God who created the universe and life, then it's not a far leap to believe that this same God could also offer life beyond death. It is interesting that Al Pacino didn't report seeing a white light, which is a very common element in many near-death stories. But as we said earlier, who says that every near-death experience has to involve the same imagery? It could be that his experience was simply different. And at the same time, we shouldn't place too much stock in any near-death experience as proof of what's beyond. Near-death experiences can be shaped by a person's own beliefs, expectations, or even their brain's response to trauma. So whether someone claims they saw a white light or, like Pacino, says they saw nothing, neither tells us definitively what lies after death. The real issue here is not whether someone experienced something during a near-death episode. It's what we believe about life, what we believe about creation, what we believe about a divine presence that will ultimately shape our understanding of the afterlife. Now, when Al Pacino was asked if this near-death experience changed the way he lives his life, he said no. Now, given his claim that he saw nothing, it's not surprising that his experience didn't lead to any significant personal or philosophical shift. But it's worth noting that many people who go through near-death experiences report profound changes in their worldview and behavior afterward. As believers in Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah, we have a unique hope when it comes to death. The Bible tells us that death was defeated through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And unlike near-death stories where people come back temporarily, Jesus is described as the firstborn from the dead, never to die again. His resurrection gives us a glimpse of what awaits those who believe, a future resurrection and life beyond this material world. Even for those who don't hold to Christian beliefs, near-death experiences can at least serve as a reminder of how fragile life is. We don't need to go through one to appreciate the fact that life is a gift. And the time that you and I have should be lived with utmost gratitude and purpose. At the end of the day, Al Pacino's near-death experience is a reminder that while death is inevitable, what we believe about life, what we believe about God, and what we believe about the afterlife ultimately determines how we approach that unknown. Al Pacino may have experienced nothing, but that doesn't mean there's nothing after death. The question we need to wrestle with isn't whether someone saw a white light or not. It's whether we believe that life has a purpose and that there's something or someone waiting for us beyond the grave.